Okay, this video is called Female Promiscuity is Bad for Girls. Okay, first we'll start with a quote from Rodney Dangerfield, the comedian. He said, "I never had casual sex, I always had to work for it." Okay, what is this all about? Well, it comes from, through the grapevine. I've heard from a lot of young men, and they tell me that the situation with women their age is really bad. Young adult women, sort of the, late teens and then all through the 20s and early 30s ages. That's kind of the ages that I'm referring to in this talk and that I've been hearing a lot about. And also, let me just give you a little background history. Back in the 1970s and 1980s, when I was growing up, it was just the expectation. You get married, and the economy was quite good. Everybody just bought a house. Usually the woman didn't even have to work. People usually did not get divorced. There were tons of kids around. When I was growing up, I didn't have to arrange a play date with my parents to get a ride to the kid's house. I just walked down the street. There were a bunch of kids on my block. There was a bunch of kids a block away. There were tons of kids. And also back then, guys didn't even worry about going to college. You just get a job in construction and you'd make plenty of money. So lots of guys wouldn't go to college. They'd get a decent job and they'd buy a house in a decent neighborhood, raise a family, and they had a pretty good life. And the woman, she didn't need to be pretty or well educated to get a husband. Pretty much all of them could. Because I go to my friends' houses, and how often did I see a friend whose mom I thought was pretty? That would be a very rare event. Let's see, what else? What have I heard? Oh, things are much worse for women nowadays. Here's the kind of stories I'm hearing. They basically say that the women have become very promiscuous. They said these women are fooling around with lots of random guys, and I think they get that from high school health class, that, sex is some type of game. Sex is serious business. And so these women are at increased risk for venereal disease. Venereal disease is usually abbreviated STD, for sexually transmitted diseases. So a lot of them have genital warts. I've heard that too I've got friends and friends of friends who are OB/GYN docs, and the incidence of genital warts is off the charts. Not to mention a lot of these other diseases, like HSV, herpes, that can stay with a person for life. It's not good. STDs increase the risk of scarring and sclerosis of the fallopian tubes. The fallopian tubes is the tube that connects the ovary to the uterus. When that gets scarred off, occluded, then the egg of the female, the ovum, cannot be transported from the ovary to the uterus, and it'll make her infertile. Also, it can be just narrowed or stenosed, if you will, and that'll increase the risk of ectopic pregnancy. When a person has an ectopic pregnancy, a lot of times they'll have to go for emergency surgery, and they'll have to, remove that ovary and that fallopian tube, which decreases the risk of ever having a baby. It increases the risk of becoming infertile. So besides all of this stuff with the sexually transmitted diseases, there's tons of chemicals in the environment nowadays, from the soy, from the atrazine on the corn, that are making people infertile. So there's a very high rates of infertility. Also, there's sort of this attitude that, being a housewife and raising children is not such a great, cool thing, but, having a big education and degree is some real prestigious thing. But I can tell you, if you talk to any older women, they will tell you the joy of their life was raising children, almost all of them. So, I think you're kidding yourself if you think that for most women, their careers are going to be more happiness for them than having a family. I don't think that. I think that's kind of a ridiculous statement based on what I've seen and heard. Let's see, what else? By the way, I've also been told by people who know, I have some people who work with a lot of pregnant females, and they also tell me that the best birth control to prevent pregnancy, if you want to prevent pregnancy, is the birth control pills. They said they almost never see a woman on pills getting pregnant. They say condoms work pretty well. They've told me, this is not a research study, this is simply what women have told me who work with pregnant females. They say lots of women get these Depo-Provera injections and they get pregnant. That's what I've been told. I'm not proving that. I'm just anecdotally stating that's what I've been told by women who are involved in taking care of pregnant females. Okay, the rhythm method, of course, that's, the joke is, what do you call the rhythm method? People who practice the rhythm method, you call them parents. Okay, as in terms of ways to prevent pregnancy. So getting back to men and women and why being promiscuous is a very bad idea for a young woman, high school, college age, and grad school age, 20s and early 30s, because men want a virgin in the perfect dream world, and they're not going to get that, but they're unlikely to get that, but they want as close to it as they can get. And the reason is, in a marriage, for example, a man basically makes himself a servant to his wife and children. He works all day and tries to bring them some, pay their bills and feed them and stuff. And in order to make himself a servant, the guy doesn't want to be a chump. He doesn't want to be cuckolded. So he wants confidence in his paternity. That's a reasonable expectation for the man. And if the woman doesn't want to give him confidence in paternity, why should he make himself like a servant to her? Sleaziness in a female is not attractive. Young adult men are much less interested in marriage than they were in the past. The divorce laws are very much against the men. Typically, the woman gets the house and he has to give her money. He really only gets his freedom from her, but it's very unfair. He's basically, in a sense, sold into indentured servitude, almost a form of slavery. It's designed to be that way because the system wants more divorces. It likes families broken apart. It likes people all messed up. It's sort of more profitable for the system. If you're a divorce lawyer, the more divorces, the better. Okay, but the reason I'm mentioning all this is because young men don't want to marry these girls. I've heard from a lot of young men. The women their age are a bunch of no good sluts, and they don't want anything to do with them. It might be fun to sleep with them with a condom so they don't get a venereal disease. They do not respect them. They do not think they will be good wives. They do not think they will be good mothers. And that means a lot of women are not going to have husbands. And by the way, what I've had seen is the fastest way to make money is to marry it. You marry a rich man or woman, all of a sudden your own personal wealth goes up. I could have married this girl whose father owned a bank. Maybe I should have. She was a pretty nice girl, too, but I just didn't want to at the time. Anyways, I could be retired right now. Anyways, women without husbands are much more likely to be poor. Also, children do better when they've got their parents together in the same house. You get different things from the mother. You tend to get a little more attention and unconditional love. From the father, you get sort of demanding standards and a role model for whatever he does. Every day my father got up early in the morning and worked all day, and then he would read and he'd exercise, and I wanted to be like him, and that helped me to have a good work ethic and to read a lot. And he was a real honest guy, no BS. And so I admired my father growing up, and that was very good for me. There were times when I felt like, dropping a class in physics or chemistry. And I had went and seen my father grow up on a dirt floor, worked his tail off, was valedictorian of his high school. And I'm like, oh man, my old man, he worked so hard. How could I be a wimp? No way, I'm not going to wimp out. I'm going to keep this class, whatever it was, physics, mathematics or whatever, but it just inspired me to try to be like my dad. That was good for me. My mom was wonderful, but she was not as academic as my father. Okay, so getting on. These guys say these women are going around, they're hanging around in bars, they're hanging around at parties, drinking, smoking cigarettes, having sex with random guys. And then they said that they tend to end up in their late 20s, early 30s, looking really kind of aged and sleazy, and no guy wants them. What I've seen also for women is that, it's fun to have a job when you're about 20, 25 years old, maybe a little more than that, maybe even all the way up to 30. You see your friends every day, you can chit-chat and stuff. But when you get older, lots of your friends have gone off, got married, and have kids, and you kind of wish you had your own kid. And also, once you have a kid, you want to be with your kid. A woman's the most important person in the whole world to her child. As the mother, at work, she's just another person. She could be fired in 2 seconds and replaced, okay? So, that's a very special role in life, being a mother. I mean, that's like about the highest role you can imagine. So, being a mother, I think, is underrated. And, anyways, I make this video because hopefully some young women will see it and it'll help them to think about what they're doing. And you don't want to just plan your life to have a good weekend. You want to plan your life to have a good decade, to have a good entire life, to someday enjoy being having a family of your own, and you'll be happier most likely if you have a husband. You'll be happier most likely if you have kids. Now, I know there's plenty of women say they would never want a husband, they would never want kids. That's fine. Every individual can pick what they want. But I see a lot of unhappiness on the horizon for a lot of unmarried women and women who can't have children, who wanted to have children. So I just give you the heads up. I see this as where it's heading. And, you can make fun of the old-fashioned ways, Christianity, get married, at a relatively young age, let's say in your 20s, raise a nice family. But you know what? They're like the happiest people I've ever seen, where they've got a family, they've never been divorced, and they have more money too because they haven't had divorce. Like a typical thing. I have a doctor friend who went through a divorce recently. He said they lost all their money. They lost their home. They lost the children's college tuition fund, all their money. It was a disaster. The divorce court sort of bankrupted their family. And this is a physician, hardworking, good physician guy, okay? The divorce lawyer of the wives just basically played her for a chump and bankrupted the family. So anyways, I wish you well. I hope this will help you, but there's a lot of wisdom in the old ways. Be simple, be loving, get along, make things work. Men and women help each other. It's a much better thing. My parents were so happy, it was unbelievable. I was just programmed to want to get married when I was young because I saw what a wonderful life my parents had and that I had as a child. So anyways, hope that's helpful.